Hey guys, Neely here. I was just sitting here in the Classic Metal Show studio checking out the website of our latest sponsor, Rock Gear. That's right, if you're a rock fan and you like to wear rock and roll memorabilia, Rock Gear is the place to go. They have a whole line of great merchandise over there that I think that anyone who is a fan of rock would appreciate. They have t-shirts of all your favorite bands, and every product in the store is officially licensed, so while you're shopping for your favorite band t-shirts online, you're supporting the bands. How great is that? And Rock Gear is 100% satisfaction guaranteed. If you're unhappy with any order, for any reason, you just got to contact them. They'll send you a replacement or refund your order. All you have to do is send an email to support@rockgear.store. And not only that, they offer free shipping on all orders in the U.S. over $35. Now, there's a value in itself. And speaking of value, Rock Gear is offering Classic Metal Show fans a 10% discount on your order if you use promo code ClassicMetal. Now, that's badass. So go over there to rockgear.store and make your order today.
That's Judas Priest right here on your Classic Metal Show with Screaming for Vengeance. And that, of course, is Judas Priest. And on the phone with us, we've got Mark Eglinton, author. How are you, Mark?
Doing well, guys. Doing well. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you sound great. How about you, Chris? I guess Chris is not with us. All right. I'm going to figure this one out. Trying to add Chris here. All right. Are you on the line, Chris?
I'm here.
All right, good. Excellent. And you're there, Mark?
I'm here as well, guys.
All right, perfect. And you hear Mark okay there, Chris?
I am ready to do this. I hear Mark fine.
All right, excellent. So it worked out. So go right ahead, Chris.
Well, dude, the book, Heavy Duty Days and Nights of Judas Priest. If you've done nothing else, you've created a book that just has the heavy metal community talking every single day, man. Nice job.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's not what I intended at all. And it has worked out like that. And I have to say, every day since it's come out, I've been pretty amazed by some of the stuff that I've read. A lot of it really good, some of it really annoying, some of it really, really annoying. But in general, it's been, as you say, something that people have been talking about. And that's only a good thing, I think.
Sure. Well, Mark, when you do a book like this, and you've done a few of them, and I know it's not on purpose because I'm sure. Let me pull that back and try this a different way. I'm going to assume that you're not looking for controversial stories as much as you have the ability to talk to these guys and they offer up the controversial stories. Is that accurate?
I think I know what you're getting at. And I have to say, pure coincidence, I ended up Rex. I put Rex in a different category because that was a controversial story. I knew it at the time. Mm-hmm. And it was too good an opportunity at that time to turn down. KK, completely different, because I didn't actually look upon his story as being particularly controversial when we first started talking about it.
Sure.
What happened was, as you both know, as the time passed between when we first started writing the book and when the book came out, all kinds of stuff happened. Mm-hmm. And it became more controversial than it was in the beginning because, KK left the band. I knew there was obviously reasons why he did so. Did I think they'd be as explosive as they've become now? I probably didn't. But it's the stuff that's happened around the time that we finished the book, delivered it to the publisher, and that's when stuff started going back and forward on the internet that's made it a lot more controversial than it ever was at the time.
Sure. Now for you as an author, does it make it harder or easier for you to do the next book, whatever the next book would be? Because obviously your books do draw attention, but at the same time, it is through no fault of your own, but KK is out there just every single day saying stuff. And, you know, the big circle that people see around it is the book that has your name on the cover too.
I know. And I've thought a lot about this. And I think I said it. I mean, I certainly thought it, but a couple of weeks ago. In fact, I thought it before this. While we were doing the book, sitting with KK, which I did a lot, you know, and you're thinking about this band that are just so huge in the sort of context of heavy metal. There was a big part of me that thought many times, I don't want to do another a heavy metal co-write. Mm-hmm. And I think on balance, and it's no disrespect to anyone out there, well, there's two reasons. One, I don't know where you go from here in heavy metal co-writing, because as far as I'm concerned, Judas Priest is about as big as it gets.
Sure.
In terms of the legacy of the music. And on the other hand, I don't know who I'd work with, and I don't know what the other big stories out there are. What else is there that wouldn't be either a backward step or a slightly sideward step? And in the interim between having done Rex's book and Brian Slagle's Metal Blade book, which was fantastic, and Nurgle's English translation of his Behemoth book, which was fantastic as well, I've gotten into other things. I've done a couple of sports co-writes over in the UK. I've done some stuff in business, etc. I don't know if I'd do another heavy metal co-write. And if I walked away having just done KK's book, I'd probably feel quite happy about it, to be honest, because, as I said, don't know where else you go.
Sure. Now, Mark, I mean, and I know you're aware of this. I just finished my 5th book, which is coming out next month in November.
Well done. Takes a lot of doing.
It does. It does take a lot, and I know for me personally, when I get into writing mode, it is absolutely addictive to me, and not just the writing part of it, but like on the Priest book that I'm getting ready to release, I spent a little bit more time doing some research and it's not just personal stories this time. There's a lot of research that I actually did, and the whole project becomes, you know, it becomes very addictive, you know, and I don't know how to explain it other than addictive. Do you have that, or are you past that now, because you've written, you know, 1 million words or whatever at this point?
No, I'm not past it. I think addictive, I don't know if that's the right word for me. Certainly for me, it's all consuming. Once you're immersed in a book and everything you're thinking about every day from a work perspective is about that, it definitely takes over your life, to the extent that when it's over, either there's 2 phases of it being over. One is when you deliver the manuscript the first time to the publisher. The other is when it's published. At both those stages, I feel quite a great degree of sadness and relief at the same time. Sadness that the process is over, because it's normally been good fun, and relief in that you've got it to the end, and, you know, finally all this work that you've done is actually going to exist in the form of a book. Do I think is that something I want to keep on doing? I always say probably not, but you always keep going back, and I probably will always keep going back and doing it in some form, whether it's music, sport, whatever it is. But I'm not about to say I'm addicted to it like you are. I admire that you are, but I don't feel that way about it. For me, it's getting the job done. It consumes me, but I'm ready. Once it's done, I'm good to move on.
Well, Mark, you know, dealing with KK and of course all the sniping going on in the music news these days, what do you attribute to the anger and the bitterness that seems to be there with KK toward his former bandmates? What if you could sum it up, what would you say is the main issue here?
There's no anger from KK's side, I can tell you that. And I'll tell you that when we went through the process of writing the book, there was never any anger. There was never any bitterness towards them. That's my point when I said that things blew up when the book was finished. During the book process, all we were concerned in telling, I mean, this book was primarily a book about KK Downing, and it just happened to be that he was also the guitar player in Judas Priest. That was the focus here. The focus was his life viewed through a lens of Judas Priest. It wasn't about what happened in Priest what the relationship was with each and every other band member. And that's an important distinction. But inevitably, as you go through the story and want to tell fans really honestly why things worked out, why they did, you have to touch on some of the things where things went wrong. And it would be completely unrealistic to suggest that things didn't go wrong, because in every band, in every relationship, in every family, stuff happens. And that's what we wanted to tell. But when we were telling it, it wasn't from a place of, oh, he's an ass, he's impossible to work with. It was simply a case of telling the story as he saw it from his eyes. Now, when some of the comments started flying around when Glenn, I mean, we all acknowledge that Glenn's physical condition is a very sad one. No one disputes that. But I think that KK felt when some of the comments came out around the time when he made a comment about being not being asked to rejoin the band, I think that's when things went wrong, and that's when things got misconstrued, and that's when single lines got plucked from interviews and spun, and things got out of control, and they're still out of control now. But during the book process, none of that was on our mind. We were never in a place of sniping. All it was let's tell the story, let's be honest about it, let's not sling mud. Believe me, there was a lot more mud that could have been slung than there was. Let's just tell it like it is. And that was the focus all along. There was never any bitterness from his side at all.
Well, are you a fan of Judas Priest yourself?
Massive Judas Priest fan. Absolutely the biggest Judas Priest fan there is. First saw them in 1984, seen them several times since. I'm a huge Priest fan.
Well, what do you think of the current condition of Priest today without the two original guitarists? And, is it Priest anymore? Is it no longer Judas Priest now? Not
for me.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't pay money to see them now in the current state. And that's no disrespect to the musicians that are playing. I just don't think that you can call it Judas Priest with neither Glenn or KK on stage.
Well, we've had that debate here on the show over the last few months, and I think a majority of people concur with that same viewpoint.
Yeah, that's the way I feel.
Yeah, well, whether it's Judas Priest or any other band out there that has core members that, that are important to the band being a band, at what point do you think bands, just in general, not specifically Priest, but just in general, at what point do you think they should call it a day once some of the key members are gone?
That's a difficult one. I think it depends which particular band members are missing in the context of the overall band. And I think in Judas Priest's case, where the two guitars was so fundamental to the sound and always has been, I think when those two guitar players that contributed that twin guitar sound aren't there, that is that moment for them. I wouldn't like to speak for other bands because I don't know if I feel the same way about other bands. I mean, let's use an example, someone like Kiss. I'm quite happy Kiss carry on the way they are at the moment. Guns N' Roses, I was fine with carrying on with whatever they wanted to do. AC/DC, I was less sure about Axl as a singer.
Right.
But with Judas Priest, I think as soon as you lose the two guitarists, I think you're done. And that's not to say that Andy Sneap and Richie Faulkner aren't great guitar players, because they are in their own way. But you just can't call it, or for me, I can't accept that as Judas Priest.
So stick a fork in it, right, Mark?
Yeah, I do think that, unless, but I don't think it's as cut and dried as that, because there's a 50th anniversary celebration coming up. I think there is a way of sticking a fork in it that doesn't involve going out like we are now.
Sure. Well, Mark, I want to pull back into the book a little bit without telling. I really don't want to tell the stories in the book because people need to read it. You know, and I don't. I'm gonna make an assumption here and tell me if I'm right or wrong. But I think that my favorite chapter in the book, and I'm 2/3 of the way through it. I've not gotten to the end yet. Yeah. But my favorite time period, I guess, that you talked about was the time period that obviously I wrote about in my book, which is Turbo.
Yeah.
And the reason that I like what you did with it is, certainly I understand that you took KK's story and you told it as he told it, but I'm liking, or I'm assuming that the way you asked the questions really helped to develop the framework of understanding that record as a whole. Mm-hmm. And what I mean is, you really painted both sides of the picture by talking about where it was recorded and the mood that they were in, in the studio, and how they really weren't as involved in 12-hour days as they were a few hours a day and then run into the bars to chase women.
Yeah.
And I also liked how you showed the other side of it with, Halford not seemingly being as locked in, to the overall mood. And I think it really paints a picture for me as a Priest fan of just why that record feels so disjointed to just about everything else in the catalog.
Interesting question, because we never actually, it was just a conversation. I can't remember when we actually talked about Turbo, because just to give you a bit of the background as to how we did how we wrote the book, it wasn't a case of me saying, okay, tomorrow we're going to talk about Turbo, the next day we'll talk about Defenders of the Faith. We just had conversations, and some of these were completely disjointed, completely random, off at tangents all over the place. And I had to go back and look at the tapes and pull it all together. But obviously along the way, we talked about Turbo several times at the beginning of when we started the book, and then we came back to it later at the end of the process. And I do remember thinking that to cover it properly was really important to the book. I'm glad you picked up that we got into it in some depth. But first of all, I should say that I don't think it's particularly disjointed. I like it. I always liked it. And I think the reason I like it so much is because I was 16 at the time when it came out.
Sure.
And 86 I've always viewed as the epicenter of heavy metal as far as I'm concerned, for tons of reasons. So many bands were coming out with albums in 86. It was a great year for being 16. There was gigs in my local town. Metallica were there that year. It was just the epicenter of everything. So for me, it meant a lot. And I think for me, it was the album that I probably knew best, bizarrely. So that's why we ended up focusing on it so much. But you're right in terms of what you say, in that the way that it's presented in the book captures what was going on in the band. I think it was really pivotal. It was really divisive in terms of the fans. And I think the band picked up. There was lots going on in the band at the time. As you say, Rob was in a difficult spot. Although we intentionally don't go into that in the book, because out of respect to Rob, it's not really anyone's business what was going on. But it's important to say that he wasn't as locked in as you say he was, and that's true. But there was this overall mood of feeling really great. The sun was shining. There was lots of things going on in heavy metal at that time that were informing what Turbo could sound like. Whether Judas Priest went too far with it, I think even KK probably says, yeah, maybe we did. But it was entirely the record that had to be made at the time, and I think you can't pull back on that. You just say, that's what we made, and, it is what it is now.
Sure. And what I mean by disjointed is two things. I don't mean that it sounds, it's not Nostradamus. That's very disjointed to their.
I like that though.
Oh, dude, stop. But no, what I mean for Turbo is two things really. One, the lyrical content is so entirely different than everything else.
Yeah, agreed.
And two, you're sailing along through this happy kind of record about, that's just relationships and, rock and roll and partying and whatever. And then all of a sudden, and this is my assumption, I don't know, I never asked Halford this, but all of a sudden you get out in the cold and it's like, whoa, this is a deep, dark, really wounded animal that wrote this fucking song.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's right in the, it just breaks the whole record. It's like, whoa, where'd this come from? It doesn't fit, anything else, Wild Nights and, that type of music.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think I hadn't really thought about it like that, but I think that might be most representative of where Rob was at the time. Don't know. That was something you probably need to ask Rob. But yeah, it could well be that he was going through a lot of stuff on his own. Meanwhile, the guys are in the Bahamas doing whatever they were doing, all of it good fun in the sunshine. So I think you're right. You have this amalgam of moods in that album. And yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that. So I appreciate that comment about Out in the Cold. Nice observation there. I look forward to your book on this.
Oh, thanks. I'll definitely send you one, man, since you always send me yours. but now, man, I have to ask, and I could tell you for me, I've written 3 about bands, and it has not been this way, but I've talked to some authors, and they have this feeling like after they work on a book, that because they learn so much more about the artist, that they don't still have that same appreciation or love for the music or whatever, like almost like they learn too much. Do you have that with either Pantera or Behemoth or Priest or any of those?
I don't listen to much Metallica nowadays.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I wrote that third person bio years ago, and there was an update of it done a couple of years ago, and It's great. And I almost feel like I wouldn't like to say I know too much about Metallica. You can never know too much, but it's become too familiar for me.
Sure.
And, you know, when they release new music, it's great. I spin the record for a couple of weeks. Then I maybe go back and listen to some old stuff now and again. In that case, I do feel that way. In the case of Priest, I certainly don't feel that way. I think the catalogues, because it's so big and covers so many eras and covers eras in which I wasn't old enough to even be a fan. I mean, when Rock and Roller came out, I was 4 years old or whatever it was. Right. I think there's a breadth of sort of history there that will always keep me interested. And to be fair, in the other cases, Behemoth, not really. Pantera, didn't listen to Pantera for a couple of years after working with Rex. Right. Nothing personal with him. Yeah, I think you do become a bit too familiar. But I think in Priest's case, again, like I said at the beginning of the call, the legacy is so huge and they're so important to heavy metal. I think it'll always be really important to me, whether no matter what I do after this.
Excellent. Well, Mark, I know you kind of briefly touched on this earlier. So what are you working on now? I mean, you said that you're kind of done with the whole heavy metal co-write stuff. So what's of interest to you at the moment?
When I say that I'm done with heavy metal, I might regret that if somebody really interested calls me and said, "Hey, listen, do you want to do this?" I don't know. That's just the way I feel at the moment. It might change because I'm right in the thick of all this stuff with KK. I'm right in the thick of all the internet stuff, which is I don't really see the resolution to that. And can I just throw something in here, just on a complete tangent? Sure. I think the thing that frustrates me most about this is how intractable fans seem to be on people leaving bands and whether they can come back or not. Now, I can name tons of people who've left bands, not just Rob Halford, who left Judas Priest for 14 years, sure, but guys who've left Iron Maiden, guys who've left other bands, who have been welcomed back with open arms. Mm-hmm. Now, the very suggestion, for whatever reason, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that KK's suggestion that he should be considered to be asked to join Judas Priest again would only be viable if Glenn was no longer involved and was no longer touring or recording. That's the only circumstance. I mean, I'm telling you now that these are the circumstances under which it would work. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't work under any other circumstances.
Right.
But when you consider that the guy's a director of the band still, it's not so far-fetched to think that could work. But for fans to say, you left, go away, I think that's intractable, and I think that's probably a little bit unfair because people were perfectly happy to welcome Rob back. People have been perfectly happy to welcome back Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson into Iron Maiden when it suited them. Yeah. I think there's a double standard here. That's my feeling. I don't know what you guys think.
But you know what? You know why it is that way, dude? Because when Rob Halford left Judas Priest and then came back, and when Dickinson and Adrian Smith left Iron Maiden and then came back, there was no social media for everybody that has a remote opinion to spew their shit. Back then you got a press release and that was it. And then maybe these same conversations were going on, but they were going on in the bar over a beer.
Yeah, I know.
And now you got, Blabbermouth or wherever, where you got every asshole that just wants to be an asshole saying, "Oh, fuck KK, man. He should never be allowed to come back." And in the it seems like it's bigger than it probably is, because really, if you just polled Judas Priest fans and not on social media, I think you would see probably an 80-20 would say, yeah, KK should absolutely come back.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And I mean, I don't for one second think that the Blabbermouth, which, by the way, I try not to read, the Blabbermouth comment section, I don't think for a moment that that's particularly large in terms of the overall opinion sort of pool, and B, representative of the overall fans. But it does amuse me that people should apply such double standards to a situation that, to me, is perfectly reasonable. I mean, the guy was in the band before Rob Halford.
Yeah.
Still a director of the band, under the right circumstances. I think it would be perfectly reasonable if he came back. I certainly think it would be perfectly reasonable if they did a 50th anniversary tour and pulled in all the guys that played in the band over the years. I think it's the best suggestion I've heard. Have a revolving lineup, Ripper Owens, Les Binks, KK Downing, all these guys, get them on stage and do a farewell tour. That would be what I would do. That's how I'd end it.
Sure.
Well, who's asking you anyway?
Yeah, no one's asking me. I'm just saying. That's what I would do. That's what I would do. Anyway, I'll go back to what you were asking me about what I'm doing. I've got a sports project that I'm doing in the UK that I can't announce yet. I enjoy doing these things. This one's a soccer player, very well-known soccer player in the world of soccer. I've done sports before. I really enjoy it. Not because I enjoy sport any more than heavy metal. I just enjoy a different discipline. I've got that going on. I'm helping a publisher with an official biography of a Dutch metal band, which is kind of a side project, kind of a favor. That'll be out later this year. And apart from that, I don't really know what's next. But I've got a feeling that there are things coming my way, sports-wise. Perhaps not metal music, but other music genre-wise. I'll consider those when they come to me. But at the moment, I'm quite happy just writing out the KK stuff, finishing the sports co-write I'm doing at the moment, and seeing what sort of beginning of next year brings.
Do you have to be a fan to write about it, dude? I mean, could you write a, I don't know, Jason Aldean book or something?
Wow. I think it helps. I really do. I don't think I've ever written a book about a band that I'm not a fan of. No, I think it would be tough. I think you have to have an interest. Yeah, you definitely have to be a fan, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just because the next one, I'm writing this series, this Cause and Effect series. Mm-hmm. I'm picking albums that did something that kind of splintered the fan bases. I mean, the first one was the Black Album, Metallica. Yeah. Second one was the self-titled Motley Crue, and now Turbo is number 3. And I'm just now I'm just starting writing phase for number 4, which is going to be Megadeth's Risk, which I just hate. I mean, I'll be honest, I hate that record.
Got a couple of good songs.
Yeah. Well, then you must have got a different version than I did, because I can't find any good songs on that piece of shit.
Yeah.
But I still think that I can write, I don't know, 20, 30,000 words on it, based on personal stories and what was going on with the band and whatever.
Yeah, because it's different, though, because you're a fan of the band.
True.
And you're only dealing with one album. So you've got that within the context of a whole slew of albums that you probably do like.
Right.
I think that's easier. But if you ask me, I don't want to name someone that I'm not a fan of.
Right.
But if you ask me to write a sort of a biography or even a co-write with somebody who I just simply wasn't a fan of, and if I wasn't a fan, I probably wouldn't know the music, and if I didn't know the music, I wouldn't be able to inject anything into the process. And to be quite honest, I probably wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
All right, so we won't be seeing a widespread panic book from you anytime soon.
I wouldn't like to put that out. I couldn't comment on that, but highly unlikely. Highly unlikely.
All right. So we know not to look forward to that book.
Don't hold your breath on that one.
All right, Mark. Well, we had somebody inquiring about you a few weeks ago. Our good friend Eric Braverman.
Who's that?
Eric Braverman.
I know Eric. Listen. I'll say it on air. I'm due Eric a call. He's a good guy, and I shall, on your prompting, give him a phone call in the next few days and catch up with him.
Yeah.
I haven't spoken to the guy for a long time. I probably owe him a copy of this book as well. So Eric, if you're listening, I'll send you a copy and we can talk about it.
Absolutely.
It's all good. It's all good. He's a great guy. He's one of these people out in the metal world that we really need more of. But I'm definitely due him a phone call, so I'll get on to him.
He's like, have you guys had any contact with Mark? And we were just like, well, yeah, we're thinking about having him on here in a little bit. Well, that guy haven't talked to me in years.
I met him in person in San Diego, and it was one of the craziest experiences of my life, in a good way. And I haven't seen him since, and I don't think I've spoken to him since. So he probably thinks that that's the reason. But in reality, it isn't the reason at all, because at that time I was living in the US, and we're now back living in the UK. And I just get immersed in work so much. You know, you get something happening, then all of a sudden a year's gone, then you've got another book to finish, and, you know, your head is down thinking about getting something finished. And before you know it, 2 years have gone, you haven't spoken to somebody. And he's not the only one in that that's happened to. And people just, you know, it's nothing personal. It's never that you don't want to talk to them. It's just time goes by, and before you know it, just like you guys, I'd love to have spoken to you guys a couple of times since the last time I spoke to you, but just never happens. You run out of time, and life goes on for you guys and for me and for Eric. I will get in touch with Eric, though. I appreciate you letting me know.
Well, I will mark this down as October 13th, 2018, and we'll see when the next time is we talk.
That would be fantastic, guys. I really appreciate the support with everything. Appreciate what you guys do for heavy metal. You call it as it is always, and I'll be one of your biggest fans, as always, going forward.
Excellent. All right, Mark, anything else you want to tell the fans, or, you know, direct them to your website or social media or whatever you got?
No, I don't have a website anymore. I can't be bothered with it. It's too much hassle to keep up to date. Don't really bother with that. The only thing I do is on Twitter. Try not to fall out with people too often, although that's not always easy on there on Twitter. I do get a bit spiky with people sometimes. Not that it helps, but yeah, I'm on there. Anyone wants to chat about anything, I'm always up for replying on Twitter. Apart from that, you know, that's where I am.
Excellent. All right, Mark. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
All right, since Chris brought this up earlier in the interview here, I think I'll end this interview with some Judas Priest from the Turbo release with Out in the Cold.
Fantastic, guys. Take care.
All right, here it is. It's Judas Priest exclusively here
on your Classic Metal Show.
Hey, it's Chris Aiken from the Classic Metal Show. We have tons of friends that are musicians, and what they care about most is their gear. If you are a gearhead, then you need to be shopping at Amplified Parts. They have everything from amplifier parts to speakers to effects pedals and more, with some of the best prices out there today. Visit them online at amplifiedparts.com or give them a call at 480-296-0890 and let them fill all of your gear needs today. When your gear is important, only shop with the best, Amplified Parts.